Okay, so we'll be going over the review sheet for your fourth test for this quarter. So let's take a look at number 1. It says find the amplitude, the number of cycles, the period, the midline range, and you need to graph one curve. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so I have the equation f of x is equal to 4 sine 1/2 x minus 1. Okay, so let's write down our information. I'm going to write it right down here. So we have the amplitude is equal to 4. Okay, so the amplitude is equal to the absolute value of 4, which is 4. The number of cycles is the absolute value of 1/2, which is equal to 1/2. Now remember, the amplitude is how high and how low it goes from the midline, and the number of cycles is how much of the curve you see in a 2 pi interval. So we have the period is 2 pi over b, 2 pi over 1/2, which is 4 pi. And what period means is when you will see one complete cycle. All right, so the number of slashes is 4 times b. 4 times 1/2 is equal to 2. And then we have our x scale is 2 pi over the number of slashes. So that's 2 pi over 2, which is pi. We need the midline. That's the line that the graph goes up and down around. Y equals -1, sorry. And the range. Okay, so starting at -1, we're going up 4 and down 4. So down 4 would put me at -5, and up 4 would put me at 3. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to graph this. So I'm just going to move this up here. Okay, so there's f of x, there's x. All right, so my midline is at -1. So here's -1. Here's my midline. Okay, we are going up to 3, down to -5. All right, so now it says to graph one cycle. Now, this is half a curve in 2 pi. So that means I need to double it to get one full cycle. So instead of having 2 slashes, right, 2 slashes for half a cycle, I'm going to have to double it so that I get one full cycle. So I actually need 4 slashes. Okay, each slash, this will stay the same. Each slash is pi, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. And that makes sense because it says I should have the period. I should have one complete cycle in 4 pi. All right, so it is a sine curve. The sine curve starts at its midline. It is a positive sine curve, so it's going to go up to its max. So at pi, I'll be up at the max. And I'll come back down to the midline, down to the min, and back up to the midline. Oh, sorry, to the midline. That's not the midline. It's the midline. Okay, and then you can just graph it. Okay, and that's it for 1A. Let's take a look at 1B. Okay, so 1B is the same thing. So we're graphing and finding all the key features for g of x is equal to -10. Cosine 2x plus 3. All right, so let's start with the amplitude. It's the absolute value of -10, which is 10. That means it's going up and down 10 units. The number of cycles is 2, which means 2 cycles in 2 pi, period. 2 pi over 2, which is pi. That's 1 LC, 1 complete curve. The number of slashes is 4 times 2, which is 8. We need our x scale, which is 2 pi over 8, which is pi over 4. the midline, y equals 3, and your range. Okay, from 3, we're going up 10 and down 10. So down 10 would put us at -7, and up 3 would put us at 13. Up 10, sorry, put us at 13 from 3. All right, so now let's graph this. Oh. Okay, so let me draw my axes. Okay, so this is g of x, and we have x here. And my midline is at 3. There's y equals 3. All right, now let's talk about the number of, I'm also going up to 13 and down to -7. All right, so now I do need to figure out how many slashes I actually need. Now, if you look here, I have 2 cycles in 2 pi. I don't want 2 cycles, I want 1 cycle. So I have to take my number of slashes and split that in half. So instead of having 8 slashes, I'm going to have 4. And the first slash is going to be pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which is pi, and that makes sense because the period is pi, which means I'll see 1 complete cycle in pi. All right, it is a cosine curve, but it is negative, so that means I have to start down. So I'll be at -7. At pi over 4, I'll be at my midline. 2 pi over 4, I'll be at my max. At 3 pi over 4, the midline, and at pi, I'll be down at my min, so it'll look like this. And that's 1 cycle. All right, let's take a look at 2. Okay, so number 2 says to write the equation of a cosine curve that has an amplitude of 8, has a period of pi over 3, and has a range of 0 to 16, and it increases from 0 to pi over 6. All right, so since I have my amplitude is 8, right, so that means my A is equal to 8. And they give us the period. Now the period, we'll use that to get our B value. So remember, the period is 2 pi over B, and that has to equal pi over 3. So I'll cross multiply. I get B pi is equal to 6 pi. Divide by pi. And I get B is equal to 6. So let's put that over here. B is equal to 6. Okay, we also have the range is from, it's going from 0 all the way up to 16, so I need my midline. Sorry. My midline would be right in the middle, which is going to be 8. All right, so that'd be y is equal to 8. And now this is important here. It says from 0 to pi, it's increasing, which means since it's cosine, right, and from 0 on your axes, right, it's increasing. It means it's going up like this. So that means it's starting down at its min. So that means actually your A over here has to be negative. Okay, so now we can write the curve. So it's y equals -8 cosine 6x plus 8. All right, let's take a look at 3. All right, so they give us all this information here, these couple of graphs, a graph, a table of values, and an equation. And we want to put them in order from least to greatest for the average rate of change. And here's the interval, right? You have, these are your x values. Okay, so since these are your x values, move that. Right, what I would do is I would change the pi's to 180 and use degrees. So this is going to be x values of 90, right? 180 divided by 2 is 90. You're going to have to find the y values. And 2 times 180 is 360. And you'll have to find the y value. All right, so let's start with f of x. So what I would do is I would just plug this into the calculator using your x value, which is 90. So plug in 4 sine 90 into your calculator, plus, make sure you're in degrees, plus 2. So this comes out to be 90 comma 6. Now you're going to plug in 360. 4 sine 360 plus 2, and you get 2. All right, now we're going to find the rate of change. The rate of change is y minus y over x minus x. All right, so the rate of change here is going to be 6 minus 2 over 90 minus 360. And we get 4 over negative 270, which reduces to negative 2 over 135. Okay, so let's go to, that's f of x. All right, so now let's go to here. So we have, this is my 90, and this would be my 360. So it's 90 comma 1 and 360 comma 3. All right, so the rate of change is going to be 1 minus 3 over 90 minus 360, and that comes out to be positive 1 over 135. And then let's go to h of x. So you could just use the chart to figure out 90, right? That's at pi over 2, which is 1. Right, that's right here. And 360, which is at 2 pi. And that is negative 1. Okay, so let's see. The rate of change is going to be 1 minus negative 1 over 90 minus 360. And that comes out to be negative 1 over 135. Okay, so now we're going to put in order from least to greatest. So my smallest would be f of x. So it'd be f of x. And then the next smallest would be h of x. And then my largest would be g of x. All right, so let's take a look at 4. Okay, so 4 says to list the factors. So you have to factor them. Find the zeros or the roots. Same thing, so that means send them equal to 0 for the functions below. All right, so I'm just going to move the paper up so I have more room here. All right, so for number 1, we have f of x, 4a, sorry. We have f of x equals 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus x. All right, so I want to find the zeros. That means my f of x has to be equal to 0. Okay, so this is what it means. F of x, right, I'm doing f of x is equal to 0. All right, so I'm going to factor. So I notice there is a GCF. The GCF is x times 3x squared plus 2x minus 1. All right, and now I want to factor what's inside the parentheses. So we're going to multiply the first times the last. We get negative 3x squared. So what factors will multiply the 3 minus to give me a 2? That would be 3 and 1, x and x. And I have to have positive 2, different signs, positive 2, so it's negative 3, positive 1. Bring down the front and the end. And then we'll factor by grouping. So I have GCF is 3x times x plus 1. GCF is negative 1 times x plus 1. So my factors are 3x minus 1 and x plus 1. And don't forget to bring down this x from the beginning. All right, and this equals 0. Okay, so that's the factored form. That's your factors. Now, when you want to find the zeros, you make your t-chart. Right, these are my factors. We have x is equal to 0. We have 3x minus 1 equals 0. So add 1, divide by 3, x is equal to 1/3. And if this is my factor, we get x is equal to negative 1. Okay? So just so you know, what this means is this. So when you look at this one, when you have f of negative 1, that's equal to 0. When you have f of 1/3, that's equal to 0. And when you have f of 0, that's also equal to 0. So when your x is 0, your y is 0. When your x is 1/3, your y is 0. When your x is negative 1, your y is 0. And you have to know that where those numbers, these numbers here come from. They come from your factors, okay? And it's opposite the sign. Okay, let's take a look at 4b. All right, so g of x is equal to x squared plus 12x plus 11. Okay, so there is no GCF. I'm just going to multiply the first times last. I get positive 11x squared. So what multiplies 11 adds to 12 would be 11x and 1x. They're both positive. That gives me positive 12 and positive 11. When I multiply them, bring down the front, bring down the end. Factor by grouping. GCF of the first group is x times x plus 11. GCF of the last group is positive 1 times x plus 11. So my factors are x plus 1, x plus 11 equals 0. Those are my factors. My zeros are x is equal to negative 1 and x is equal to negative 11. So remember what this means is when you have f of negative 1, it's equal to 0. When you have f of negative 11, that's equal to 0. Okay, so let's take a look at 5. Okay, so 5 is, it's pretty straightforward. It's f of x is equal to this polynomial. G of x is equal to this polynomial. You have to do f of x minus g of x. All right, so when you set it up, you want to make sure you use parentheses because you are subtracting polynomials. So it's negative 64 x to the third plus 7x squared minus 25x plus 123 minus g of x, which is negative 47x cubed minus 2x squared plus 58x plus 33. All right, so remember, since we are subtracting polynomials, you have to distribute the negative 1. Right, we distribute this one that's in front, they just stay the same. That's where same change comes from, or same change opposite. So it's just negative 64x to the third plus 7x squared minus 25x plus 123 plus 47, I don't know why I put that parentheses in there, plus 47x to the third plus 2x squared minus 58x minus 33. All right, so now let's combine like terms. All right, so I have my x squareds will combine. So negative 64x squared plus 47x squared is negative 17x squared. It's a 17. And then I have my x squareds. Oh, this should be an x cubed, sorry. X cubed. All right, now my squares. I have 7x squared plus 2x squared is 9x squared. And then we have negative 25x, negative 58x, that's going to be negative 83x. And then I have 123 and negative 33 is plus 90. Okay, and what this means when you're subtracting these polynomials, it means that since you're doing f of x minus g of x, since you're taking this away from this guy, what that means is that f of x is this much greater than g of x. Okay, that's what it means. All right, so moving on to number 6. That means we got to flip the paper over. I got to change my slide. Okay, so let's take a look at number 6. All right, so it says, given the graph below, you want to find the amplitude, the number of cycles, the period, and the midline. So what you want to do first is you want to find that midline. Okay, so you have to find the midline in order to find the amplitude and stuff. So count the number of boxes you have. You have, starting from here, from the min, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's 10 units up and down. So 10 divided by 2 would be 5. So that means 5, I need 5 up and 5 down. So let's count 5, starting at the min. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here would be my midline, right here. So notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my midline is y is equal to 2. All right, so my amplitude, right? So we're going up and down 5. My amplitude is equal to 5. I also need the number of cycles. So now I could tell that it is a sine curve because it is starting at the midline. So let's see how many complete curves. This is 2 pi back here. So how many complete curves? Here's one S. There's one curve. Here's two curves. And here's three curves. So my number of cycles is equal to 3. And now I want the period. The period is when you see one complete curve. So starting here, which is right here, that's one complete curve. And this is at 2 pi over 3. Or you could have done 2 pi over b, which we know which is the number of cycles. So it's 2 pi over 3, okay, for the period. All right, number 7. It says to identify whether it's what type of equation it is. So notice here for 7a, there's this e, and this is compound continuously. Okay. 7 is a growth, and the reason why I know it's growth is because I have a number inside there that's greater than 1, because remember growth is 1 plus the rate, okay, raised to the t power, okay, and so this is exponential growth. And remember, you have to have this exponent up here. That exponent has to be positive. And notice here, I have a number in here that's less than 1. That's 1 minus your rate raised to the t power. So this is exponential decay because it's going down. Okay, so let's take a look at 8. Okay, so 8 says, residents of upstate New York are accustomed to large amounts of snow, with snowfall often exceeding 6 inches in one day. In one city, such snowfalls were recorded for 2 seasons and are as follows in inches. So we have this data here. What is the mean and the population standard deviation for this data to the nearest hundredth? So you need to type this into your calculator. So put this on pause and plug it into the calculator. So you go into Stat, Edit. If you have anything in your list 1 or list 2, clear it out. You're going to plug this in as just one list because we don't have a frequency. All right, so just one list, just plug it in. Okay, put me on pause and plug it in. Don't just copy down what I put. Actually do it. All right. So hopefully you plugged it in and now we're back. So we have, remember you have to write down your calculator screen. So we have x bar is 9.45. We have the sum of the x's is 170.2. The sum of the x's squared is 1861.58. The sample standard deviation is 3.8520000584. Standard deviation, which is also your population standard deviation, is 3.7434716884. N is 18. That's how many pieces of data you plugged in. Min X is 66.1, which is the smallest number you plugged in. Quartile 1 is 7. That's the 25th percentile. The median, which is the second quartile, 50th percentile, is 8.45. We have quartile 3, which is 75th percentile, is 9.5. And I'll put it up here. Your max X, sorry, ran out of room, is 21.5, which is the largest piece of data you plugged in. All right, so we want the mean. Oh, and this also had a bar over it. All right, so we want the mean, right, X bar, which is your mu, is equal to 9.46. That's to the nearest hundredth. And your population standard deviation, which is your sigma x, is 3.74. All right, next, number 9. Okay, so number 9 says, given the mean and the standard deviation, find the interval for 95th percentile is centered on. So remember, 95th percentile, that's your margin of error. Your margin of error is 2 standard deviations. So if my mean is right here in the middle, that's 65. I want 2 standard deviations to the right, and I want 2 standard deviations to the left. So if my standard deviation is 3, so 1 standard deviation will put me at 68. 2 standard deviations will put me at 71. That's to the right. To the left, Going down 3, one standard deviation would put me at 62. And then go down again, another standard deviation would put me at 59. So that would be from 59 to 71. So 59 to 71. Or you could use brackets, 59 to 71. Okay, and the same thing for B. All right, so I have my mean is right in the middle, 121. So my standard deviation is 4.7. So one standard deviation would put me at 125.7. So two standard deviations, which is what I want, 95% top, 95% is 130.4. One standard deviation to the left would be 116.3. Two standard deviations to the left would be 111.6. So that would be from 111.6 to 130.4. Okay, and the last one says, number 10, describe how you would perform an experiment to determine if sugar causes diabetes. All right, so you would have to break your sample into two groups. So break into two groups. Okay, one group would get a sugar pill. And the other group, would get a placebo. Okay, and then what you would do after a certain amount of time, you would compare the results. Okay, that's it. All right, have a good night. See you guys tomorrow. Watch the video again if you need to, whatever you need to do. This is going to be the last test for the quarter. All right, have a good night, everyone.